You're listening to the podcast of Iris Josephina. If you're passionate about exploring the menstrual cycle, cyclical living, body wisdom, personal growth, spirituality, and running a business in alignment with your natural cycles, you're in the right place. I'm Iris. I'm an entrepreneur, functional hormone specialist, trainer, and coach, and I'm on a mission to share insights, fun facts, and inspiration I discover along the way as I run my business and walk my own path on Earth. Here, you'll hear my personal stories, guest interviews, and vulnerable shares from clients and students. Most people know me from Instagram, where you can find me under @CycleSeeds, or they have been a coaching client or student in one of my courses. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey, Roxanne, welcome to the show.
Hey, Iris. Thank you for having me. It's so good to reconnect.
It's so good to reconnect. I want to start by sharing with people how we met. I actually cannot remember the year. I can't remember what year it was that we met, but we met at the SMCR conference, which is a conference organized by the Society for Menstrual Cycle Research. And it's basically a gathering of people who are obsessed with the menstrual cycle.
I know. I couldn't remember either. And I actually, before we jumped on, I went into my Facebook groups because there was a group that I think had been formed afterwards because I was like, when was that? And I think it was 2015, so almost 10 years ago. That was
Oh,
the one with
wow.
Gloria Steinem, I think, was the keynote. I don't know. I've conflated a lot of them in my head. They're all big, one wonderful event in which we're all there playing. So that's how it exists in my mind.
Yeah, just one big playground of people obsessed with the menstrual cycle. That's how it lives in my memory always. But it was so nice to meet each other there and have our little group of menstrual people. And
Yeah.
for me, it was actually the very first time in my life that I stepped into a space where people were as obsessed about the menstrual cycle as I was, and as interested and as intrigued.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the same for me. It felt like such a wonderful homecoming, to be with this group of people of all different backgrounds, all different disciplines, all different ways of relating to the menstrual throughout the lifespan, and to have this be celebrated and passionately pursued in so many different ways. It was so joyous and encouraging to me. I think, particularly at that place in my life. I don't know about you, but I was like deep in my research at that time, and I just to hear other people's ideas and see other people's ways of dancing with the cycle. It was just so grateful to the Society of Menstrual Cycle Research and all the work that they do, and just the community, of that you and I entered into all those years ago.
Yeah, me too. For me, it was really formative to be in that space and to also have all the mentors who had been walking this path for so long, who had been in this field since the 70s. And I was there. I was really a baby. You said it's almost 10 years ago. I'm 33 now. I was like a baby, early 20s baby. Yeah, that's a while ago.
Mhm.
Ah, such good memories. And I also feel that your work really formed around the menstrual cycle, and that you've gotten as inspired as I was. And before we dive into all the juicy stuff that we're going to talk about today, could you start with sharing with people who you are and what your work entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Roxanne Partridge, and my work is contained in this temenos of embody period. Oh, what does my work entail? I mean, so much. But really, it holds the menstrual experience as well as sexual experience and embodied experience. as these deep thresholds and really potent thresholds of self-knowing, as these pathways into our authentic expression. And I host and facilitate and guide through like a very eclectic collection of modalities and practices. My work is arts based, it's archetypal, it's mythic, it weaves in various holistic, creative, indigenous, and liberational practices that come to me through various lineages of depth psychology. And, because I really believe that like in creative and wisdom based ways of both healing and discovery and expression, that we are here to be fully alive, and that our bodies and our cycles and our sexuality are a deep, like rooted place of our creative energy and our life force. So it's kind of the essence, I would say, of my work and the menstrual piece of that. And that's, when you and I met at SMCR all those years ago, of like really kind of my work at that moment had been very much in conscious sexuality and the relationship to our sensate bodies and in relationship to our world and our planet. And it had just kind of taken this menstrual turn that I hadn't been expecting. Like once it got there, like I wasn't surprised, but it did take me by surprise at first, because I was like, so often when I meet other people in the menstrual field, or when I work with women too, it's almost as if the menstrual is this like last frontier of awareness and consciousness. And then it's like, oh my God, how have we not already been considering this? Because it is so something that Chris Boble, who is one of the elders of the SMCR, and she was the external reader in my dissertation. One thing that she says that sticks with me is that how the menstruation is part and parcel of our embodiment. It is a part of our fullness, and how the cycle really welcomes us home to the fullness of our embodied lives.
So beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Yes. All of this. And weaving further onto this and just going back a little bit, you mentioned depth psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, how is this different from like more mainstream psychology as we know it? And why is it important that we make this connection between depth psychology and the menstrual cycle, and how are they like interwoven?
Yeah, I love that question. So, depth psychology is, like at its base, it's the study of the unconscious. And the way that I hold it, the way that depth psychology has come to me is this kind of weave work of both, or, well, it's not just both because it's so many more things than just two, but it's Jungian psychology. It is liberation psychology. It is somatic. It is ecological. It is this very soul-centered and soul-based approach to the psyche, and it's a field that very much embraces the unconscious, and it also embraces the creative potential of the unconscious, and also the autonomy of the unconscious. And I think this is something that mainstream psychology can struggle with in trying to kind of clean up or make neat or controllable the autonomy of the unconscious. And really seeing people as truly intersectional beings that include not just the personal conscious and unconsciousness, but also the collective, the ancestral, um, the nature, and the anima mundi, the soul of the world that is living through all of us, that it's this like very multi-layered view of the psyche and of what the human being is a part of. It's very systemic. We are not, sort of like individual sort of vacuums, that our dilemmas or our problems are just locked in the individual, but rather like of a deep and wide community of histories and relationships. So that's kind of a really broad understanding of depth psychology, and I think depth psychology kind of as a practice is in relationship to all of these layers, and in relationship to the unknown. And the unknown is like super uncomfortable, right? And we try in our lives to like, kind of shore up and buttress the ego as much as possible into the relationship to the unknown and reassure ourselves, where depth psychology is like, nah, like you gotta really
Let go all of it.
yeah, it's like into the mystery, the mystery is the way. And so I feel like that kind of bleeds into the menstrual piece here too, because there's something about that where to recognize the more than and the other than the physiological in the menstrual cycle. That the menstrual cycle, as I see it, is a part of it is this body soul phenomenon, where psyche and soma kind of, flow together. It's not a clean cut one or the other. It's not a clean cut causal relationship, that they're in a dance, that they're in communication. And so in that way, I see menstrual events, cyclical events, in a similar way as like dreams. That it's arising, that our symptomology, which I mean that in a really neutral way. Like, symptomology could just be like ovulation, like it's not bad. But that like, the way that the menstrual cycle manifests, whether it's a physiological manifestation, an emotional, a behavioral, that these are all communications of our wider selves, and included in that are things we don't know. And so, menstruation has had such a hard time, I think, historically, like starting from way back in like the ancient Greeks, and beyond, but like, of like hysteria and the wandering womb. And, we have a really hard time thinking about menstruation culturally and welcoming menstruation into our lives without overly pathologizing it or, trying to like perfect it in some way. And so what I like about the depth psychological approach, or the depth psychological kind of turning towards the menstrual cycle, is it's kind of allowing menstruation to have imaginal rights, that it gets to participate in like the dreaming of our lives, that it's not just some reproductive thing, that we can decide if we want it or not, or something, that it has a wider sort of, I mean, there's of course, as I know, like, that we could see it as a vital sign in terms of our physical health, but I see it also as like this, however it's happening in any one of our bodies, that it is a part of our larger embodied story. And so I think the depth psychological position of really listening into the unknown, listening into the mystery, really helps us to kind of stay close to menstruation without trying to nail it down. You know what I mean? Without trying to like make it any one particular thing, to be in the multiplicity of the really dynamic experience that is cycling, like, throughout the lifespan.
I love this approach so much. And I love it because I can feel it on a visceral level, but not on a physiological visceral level, but like a truth. Like when you speak like this, I'm like, this is the truth of the entirety of what the menstrual experience can be. This is actually, I have to say it differently. This is the potential where we often don't go. Like that's what I feel when you describe it in this way. Like what we currently do is, as you say, pathologizing and trying to rationalize our way into and out of the menstrual cycle. But then we miss all the things that you just mentioned. So I love this approach, and I think and feel that this cultivating this practice of approaching the menstrual cycle from this mystery perspective and allowing for mystery to have a seat at the table when it comes to the menstrual cycle, that this can open up like so much for so many people. Thank you so much for taking us into that pathway to look from this perspective.
Yeah. And I love that, the way that you just put that, for mystery to have a seat at the table with the menstrual cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So key.
Yeah, because I feel when we forget that, or when we don't allow this mystery to happen, we also miss out on part of the beauty that we can experience and the wisdom that comes to us and from us and through us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how I feel it when you explain it like this, the menstrual cycle is really also a path towards self-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
How can we cultivate that path towards self-knowing and also wholeness through our cyclical experience, according to your vision and what you believe and know?
Yeah. So, um, hmm. So, like, I have so many ideas at one time. To begin, like, going back to what you were saying about the mystery having a seat at the table, so when we turn towards menstruation in that way, and what do we mean by a path towards self-knowing, right? It's like to know what's in the depths, to know beyond what we already know, right? Is to further know ourselves, and wholeness of like our fullness beyond the conscious situation, beyond the conscious ego, of whatever story we happen to be living in. And so menstruate, like, attuning to our cycle in a depth psychological way might look like, really getting curious about your menstrual experience in any of the phases, premenstrually, menstrually, in your follicular phase, ovulating, all of it, all of the days. and being curious, who's here, you know, in the feeling, in the emotion, in the sensation, even, in any of the discomfort, in any of the joy, in any of the excitement, in any of the like flush of energy, like all of the many, 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 many ways that the cycle shows itself to us. And to turn towards it in a similar way that we would if we were going on a vision quest, or if we were seeking counsel in some wise elder, to turn towards our cyclical experience and greet it as a guest, as a figure, as a guide, who is unknown, who is mysterious, who is, I have referred to these like these sort of autonomous images of our menstrual experience as bloody others, of these, um, as these sort of welcoming them, giving them all a seat at the table. Who is this in my luteal phase? Who shows up? Who is this in my follicular phase? And then it can be different any cycle, right? No two cycles are exactly the same, and that we are constantly living. We're not static beings. And so, where our cycle is living with us and dreaming with us and revealing things from our own depths, from our own mystery, all of the time, it's such an incredible resource. And right now I'm thinking about something that Samantha Zipporah, is that how you pronounce her last name, had shared with me once. I know the two of you know each other too.
Yes.
She was in the Hudson Valley
Yeah.
uh, this past fall, and I had the great opportunity to sit and circle with her. And she shared something that a Peruvian shamanist had shared with her, that I think it was something, the way that I remember it is like, yeah, the men do the ayahuasca and the women, they menstruate. They have menstrual cycles, and and it's that kind of spirit that I'm touching on here in terms of the this menstruation as a path to self-knowing that we
I love
have.
that.
And it's right here happening all of the time, and to just turn to it with a different awareness of like all of this wisdom and all, and it might be super particular and nuanced and personal. It might be more collective. It could be so many things. You have no idea. It's a mystery. And that there are these invitations into a wider, deeper knowing of our own inner ecology and our collective, our families, our community, our careers, that it's showing up through psyche and through our menstrual cycle, and just where those two, for me, as I said earlier, it's a form of dreaming. And there's a kind of, just going off what Samantha had shared, that it's a simple attunement of attention. It doesn't take that much. We don't need to necessarily, like, of course you always can go into the cave or go into the medicine journey, or whatever the case may be, or and also, a menstrual experience happening through the body, happening through the heart, happening through a thought, can similarly initiate us into a new understanding, a new perspective, a new vision of ourselves, and also point us forward. And I just think that potential is so exciting to me, and witnessing women kind of tune into their cycles and realize and begin to really be in conversation, like an active conversation, and to know, like, wow, I've got this like partner here that's a part of my everyday. If you're in a cyclical body, and you're cycling, that like there is this constant wisdom keeper with you. And it
Oh, you're
may show
breaking
up
up
like
a.
a really gnarly. Ooh, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you repeat the last two sentences that you said?
Yeah, let's see. What was I saying? Oh, that we have this constant wisdom keeper sitting next to us,
I
even
love
if it
that.
shows up as like a really gnarly mood, like it's like turning to, it might, sometimes it may feel like turning towards a nightmare, but that it is an image, it is a dream, it is a symbol, it is an archetype, It is this other, it is this mystery that is inviting us further into ourselves and wider into our wholeness.
I love that. And I also really love the dreaming part. It actually reminds me of an experience I was honored to have when I was 21. I had the honor to visit an indigenous community in Colombia. And I remember when the women there told me that when a girl has her first period, she has to go to a special place where she needs to have her experience with the dream world. And then
Mm,
when she comes back to community, she has to report the wisdom that she received from dream world to share with the community so that they can grow and move forward. So
mm,
I feel that these images and these understandings, they're so human. Like the way of looking at a menstrual cycle like a state of dreaming that provides wisdom, mystery that can provide wisdom, the comparison with the ayahuasca, and then we having this very potent internal ayahuasca that it is our menstrual cycle is so human. It's such a human blueprint to look and
mm,
experience and perceive the menstrual cycle like that. And it's just, it humbles me to my knees. It's so beautiful. And I feel so honored to remember this with you today. And I
mm,
hope that people listening also feel like viscerally in their bodies that this remembering is happening.
mm. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that memory, that experience of yours, Iris.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. I was really young. I wasn't even fully in this work yet. I was 21 years old, but it's
Mm,
like it's a core memory. Like learning about this, I think it really helped me walk this path,
yeah.
and I didn't realize until later that that moment had been so crucial in this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. Oh, that's so beautiful. That just like, oh, my heart just like melted right there. Oh, what a
My
beautiful
heart
moment.
did when I heard it. So it's,
Yeah, I love thinking of that, like the 21-year-old you, having that experience. And then, I don't know, and then the work that you've dreamed forward into the world, and brought into your communities and shares. Oh, so, so gorgeous. Um,
yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, when I share about it like that and when I hear your story and how our stories weave together, like it feels so right to be on this path,
mm,
and it feels so right to do all of this, do an experience and feel all of this remembrance together with people who've like walked their own path in a different way, but we're all like, how I'm seeing it is that we're all part of like sitting around the campfire where there is this big pot of soup of mystery. And we're all like with our faces towards the same pot of soup where the mystery is brewing from, you know? That's the image that I get.
mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's so rich and so flavorful, and I just riffing off that image, if we all have like these big ladles in our hands and we're taking scoops and tasting it, and like we all have like such rich and different descriptions, and they are all a part of the soup. It's
Yeah.
like, and because I think like it's such there's such complexity. That's
Mm.
something that I'm reminded of again and again and again. Like it's like I often think of, our sexual ecology and our cycle, like in this ecological sort of metaphor of like an estuary, and these like
Mm.
this really fertile landscape, and and it's so dense with life, and it's and there's everything happening at once. It's life, it's death, it's the life death rebirth cycle, it's creativity, it's just like humming with so much, and it has its tides, and it has its, like all of those watery metaphors, and I'm coming to that place of like it doesn't, for me, it doesn't want to be contained. It doesn't want
Mm.
to be contained in like a single meaning. It doesn't want to be like menstruation is X,
Hmm.
like stamped, but rather like menstruation is like, menstruation is all of these things, where it's the menstrual cycle is ancestor, it is mystery, it is the collective, it is the earth, it is our hormones, it is our childhood trauma, it is the future that we're dreaming, it is, it's all of it, and I think that's the most powerful place. Like for me, that's where like it feels like this really gorgeous, humming, beautiful, healthy, and healthy I mean like vibrant ecology, when it gets to flow with all of its multiplicity.
Yeah. And I really resonate with the unboundness, like the non-containment of it.
Mm.
Like it's so vast. Like it's almost like a landscape. When you were saying it, I saw like this vast, expansive landscape that kept expanding endlessly in every single direction
Mm.
with all of its like flowers and trees and animals and expressions and waters and everything.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think it's very healing. I mean, it feels just talking to you about this feels healing to me. And I feel it's healing for us when we are allowed to imagine and we are allowed to go there because I feel that's where so many of us get lost, we must contain, we must fit the narrative, we must follow the protocol. And this is where all the mystery and magic fall away
Yeah.
because we're not going beyond the confinements of what we're told, what we believe, what we think. So
Yeah.
I feel what I want to do right now is just mention that this is your permission slip to break free,
Mm.
like out of the confinements of what you think your menstrual cycle is, everything that it is. Like, this is your permission slip to go beyond what you think is possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It is, and listening to you say that, and I love that invitation. And oh, everyone listening, please take up that slip, because it is this, it's so non dogmatic, I want to say. Like when we attune to our cycle from the place of mystery, it like for me, the potential then is this cyclical, month to month, day to day practice
Yeah.
of reverence to the here and the now, as
Mm.
opposed to some prescribed, way of being, some identity. of, or some, of what my life should look like, how I'm supposed to behave, who I'm supposed to be in the world, how, what I'm supposed to do, what is successful, what is this, like, where the cycle, as this practice of revelation,
Yeah.
you know, is this is just, of like, okay, this now, now follow that. Like it's a living, moving practice, as opposed to, you know, um, a rule based, this is, or, dogma of how one should be, who one should be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And what also comes up for me is letting go of the anticipation of what the next cycle phase is going to be like.
Mm.
I feel that that is like a whole thing with this new social media stuff going on. Like, this is what your ovulation phase is supposed to be like. It's like,
Mhm.
no, like, don't confine yourself again. Like,
Right.
leave it open and step into it and experience.
Yeah.
Embody what is, as you said, in the moment, here now.
Yeah. Yeah, because we are not the same every day. We
No.
are, and we are not the same every month, and the cycle is happening with us, right? And I think that you're exactly like tuning into this thing that I see too, of like, where it's so sneaky, that it's it's the lurking feminine ideal. It's so sneaky, it's like, like, let me now perfect, you know my cycle, and that anticipation, and how it's, in all of the forms of how it should show up. And, rather of the how to, of cycling with yourself, and with your cycle, and what is it showing you, it's a converse, if it were an ongoing conversation between you and an intimate friend, of what is it revealing to you about your life today. That being that, permission slip to be in, like, I don't know, this is, it's new, this is discovery, and I think that's such a great interruption, to that pressure and that narrative of, it should be.
I think you were mentioning um, to look at the menstrual cycle as an ongoing conversation and cycling with someone.
Mm. Yeah. To see it as, that the cycle, just as we are, is is living right in the present moment. It's not an artifact of the past. It's not a goal of the future. It's right here with of us, and it may give us glimpses. It might bring us information about the past or the future, but it's bringing us that information into our here and now. And I just feel like that's such a radically different orientation to this cycle than what we are offered culturally.
Yes.
And I think it takes time, and I want to offer that to people listening too, that this, to, like, the real generosity of time, to, in turning towards, if you want, to shift your relationship with your cycle, like, to really give yourself time, because it is the undoing of so much, that is not just our
Yeah.
lifetime. but like thousands of years. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, and the what you just mentioned, that it's such a radical different way to how most of us are raised with the menstrual cycle. I feel many people are raised with the menstrual cycles as if it's something outside of themselves happening to them
Right.
instead of something that is with them and growing and being and embodying with them. So, yeah, having a lot of grace and patience and understanding with shifting and navigating the narrative, really.
Mm-hmm.
It can take time. Like, I remember when I started, I don't know, do you remember how you started with all of this?
I started during a very painful menstrual cramp one night. I was on my bed with a heating pad and tea and candles and my feet raised and space from my partner at the time. And I was like, I'm doing all the right things. And I'm just gonna like, but I was in so much pain. And I realized like, okay, like externally, like, yeah, I'm taking care of myself in these certain self-care ways. Check, check, check. Great, great, great. And I was like, but I realized because I was laying there for quite some time and I had a lot of time to think, I was like, oh, finally dawned on me, like, I'm not doing what I would do if like something else in my life was happening. Like if I was having some other kind of challenge that wasn't related to my menstrual cycle, I would be approaching this differently. And I would be approaching it from this like depth psychological lens, but I'm not doing that now. And I was like, well, what if I did that now? I've got time. I'm laying here in pain. What if I did something else? And so I decided to have a conversation with my uterus. And it took a lot of courage, I realized, and it was very surprising to turn my attention to my uterus and be like, hey, what's going on? you know, who's here? Like what's happening? Like who's here in all of this pain? What do you need me to know? What do you need?
Mm.
What do you want to tell me? What do I need to be shown? And even to get to that question, like there was so much like physical resistance to engaging because I just wanted to be like, I'm going to take some painkillers and drink more raspberry leaf tea. And like, I just want this pain to go away and get on with it. And, to
Mm.
drop in and have this conversation took me a long time to get there that night. But at the second I was able to address my uterus in this way and say, I'm listening. I'm here. I can handle it. Like, what do you want to show me? Like, what is it? I'm here. I'm listening to you. And it's that thing that we've probably have heard in many different ways, that the body is just like, you know, an eager dog or pet that is just like waiting for attention, And
I
it's like,
have never heard that before.
it's like, oh yeah, I'm right here. I'm your BFF. Like, please, let's play. Like, pet me. It was like so happy to get the attention. It was like, oh my God, yes. Thank you. So it was immediately responsive. And it was so interesting because the image, like, it was a felt image. There wasn't a visual, but there was this
Mm.
sense that in that pain was something deeply in mourning.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, huh. I never would have guessed. I have no idea what this means. I have no, and it was so like important, I think, that there wasn't an image, like a visual image, because it made it even more mysterious. It was just this
Hmm.
feeling of just deep, deep mourning. And I knew, I was like, I have to sit next to this mourner. And I just have to
Hmm.
sit for as long as it takes. And I can't go in there and pat it on the back and tell it it's going to be okay. I can't go in there and decide what its mourning is. I don't know what its grief is. I have no idea. Who am I to decide what this mourning is about? I have no clue. And that night, I knew I was like preparing, like I had been doing years of study and research and exploration in Tantra and conscious sexuality. And I knew that night all of my research was changing direction. And
Hmm.
I was like, this is it. This, I don't know what this is, and I'm always up for a challenge. And so I was like, this, I need to pursue this inquiry of sitting alongside this mourner. And that was the beginning of my menstrual research.
Hmm. Wow, that's beautiful. I feel we all had an experience like that. Like that we somehow received this little message like, hey, maybe you should like connect. Maybe. And then
Mhm.
we do it.
Mhm.
And then there is this entire world unlocking. As if you're like opening the door to Narnia and you're like, whoa, what? Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love that. It really is. It's a total unlock to, you know, Narnia, the underworld, the like the dream, it is. It's like you are entering the whole new dimension and realm of the imagination and of consciousness. And oh my God, what a path it took me on. And and that's how, I come back to the autonomy of the unconscious, and and to practice unknowing and to give menstrual experience the right to be unknown. We want to
Mm.
know what menstruation is so badly. Right? We want to track it, and like I do all these things. I track my cycle. I do all these things, but we want to like drain it, and we're the same, right, with our personalities. That we wish, our egos want to drain the unconscious so badly so that we can feel safe and in control. And menstruation is this wonderful rebel to all of that. We want to do this with all parts of life, right? We want to control, we want to pin things down, we want to empty the unconscious of its contents, and across the board in all categories of life, like that just can't be so. The unknown persists. The unconscious is the unconscious. And menstruation is this wonderful reminder of that, and
Mm.
it's an embodied way to this built-in embodied practice that's already happening, to be in relationship with our fullness and our mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I can really literally talk for hours with you.
Same. This feels so good. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for inviting me into this conversation. And it's always such a joy to see like what you're up to on your side of the fire and the soup.
Well, same. I love like witnessing your work and how it has unfolded over the years. And in line of that, is there any wisdom or any encouragement or invitation or practice that you'd like to share with people who are already on their menstrual cycle awareness journey, or people who are just like peeking around the corner and are listening to this and are getting really curious?
Yeah. Mm. Well, I mean, what's coming to me right now is I feel something we've been talking around in this conversation, which is, wherever you may be in your journey, whether, if you're starting out or, have been moving with your cycle in various ways for a while, this piece around turning to your cycle with curiosity. And, Iris, you said earlier, many of us in our culture are taught to experience our cycle as something that is happening to us, something that's outside of that. And so I want to like lean into that actually for a second, because it can help, if we, from an archetype, like if we, it kind of helps with this sort of archetypal depth psychological move where we're personifying it, so just to
Mm.
kind of like play with that. If we embrace that of like, okay, let's take that, let's just like adjust that like an inch by saying, okay, the cycle is happening to me, my PMS or my luteal phase is happening to me. And to get creative and curious of like, okay, well, who is it? We're already doing it, right? We're already othering it. So I'm going to invite you to take it
Mm.
even a step further of like, who is this? What's their name? What do they look like? What do they want? What's their attitude? Like if you were to embody like the whole attitude of this thing that has come in and like changed your life for a day, what's its story? And I think that can be a path to like, so going through the cultural conditioning of like the cycle is something happening to me as outside of me and other, and then embracing that creatively, imaginally, and kind of turning it up and getting to know who's here. And I think that will turn the ego or the waking consciousness towards the menstrual experience in a different way, towards, rather than like pushing it away, it's a turning towards with some playful
Mm.
curiosity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I feel it may also be accessible
Mm-hmm.
to people in this way, because the menstrual cycle is this big, big thing that we often do not move towards. So, thank you for that. I think that's very helpful and encouraging for people because it also triggers curiosity. And I feel curiosity is always a good pathway to approach things.
Yeah, and staying with, and welcoming in exactly where you are and what's happening, right? Not trying to make it anything else, but rather just getting more information, like what's happening right here and right now, and just be like, tell me more. Tell me more. And that turning towards exactly where you're at opens up so many unexpected doors, and then you are on your way.
Yeah, and then the doors just keep opening
Yep.
forever.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah, I'm imagining like I'm like on the preconception path, and
Mm,
the
mm.
things that I'm witnessing right now, I'm like, oh my God, there is more. There is even so much more. And then I haven't even like walked through a full pregnancy. I haven't even stood on the threshold of birth. I haven't even experienced postpartum. I haven't even, experienced the transition towards menopause. Like there is so much. It never stops. Like how exciting,
Oh, yes. How exciting. I love that. Yeah, your full life.
Yeah. Every day is a new opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
get to know a cyclical part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. I want to like sit with you for hours and talk and be in this space, but we are also doing a podcast. So we have to end somewhere.
Yes.
Um, but I just want to really thank you from the bottom of my womb that
Mm.
you came here today and that you shared your wisdom with us and that you stepped into this space with me, really. Like I had no idea what was going to happen for this podcast. And I love how it turned out and the things that we touched upon and uncovered. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you from my womb to your womb. Thank you. Thank you. This feels really good and such a joy and so nourishing to have this conversation and to share it with everyone here listening. Thank you, everyone, for being curious.
Yeah. And if people want to learn more about you, what's the best way to find you? Where can people find you?
Hmm. Um, Good ways of finding me. You can follow me on Instagram at embodieperiod. And you can also check out my website, which is embodyperiod.com. And there's some more description around depth psychology and different practices. If any of those things have been curious to you while listening, I've got some resources there. And yeah, those are the best ways. Occasionally I'll send out newsletters, but um, Instagram is probably the place where I am most active these days as a way to connect. And of course, if you're looking to deepen into any of this work and curious to work with me, the website is a great place to connect that way as well. So, yeah, thanks.
I'll make sure to paste all of that in the show notes so people know where to find you.
Thank you.
Thank you again so, so much for today.
Thank you, Iris.
Okay, this wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Want to know more about me? The best way to reach me is via @CycleSeeds on Instagram. And if you heard something today and you think, oh my God, wow, I learned something new, feel free to share the podcast on your social media and tag me. Or leave a review or rating. In this way, you help me reach more people like you. Thank you so much.